there are those who will kill for him. Who is he? What does he want? Where did he come from? And can he be stopped? The Omen. If this is the truth, where does it end?
The Omen from 1976 is directed by Richard Donner, and it was a horror movie that I had actually never seen until very recently. I went and saw the first Omen, and while I didn't love that movie, I enjoyed it. And a lot of people were like, you got to check out the 1976 Omen movie. It fits together with the first Omen so well. And so I watched it, and now I can confirm that the first Omen fits in perfectly with the original 1976 Omen. Just figured I'd throw that in before getting into the actual review. But with that said, let's get into the synopsis, and then I'll give you positives and negatives. So kicking things off in this movie, you have a father who just found out that his son died at childbirth, and he doesn't want to tell his wife. He's sitting there talking to a priest, and the priest is like, listen, this is a terrible event that happened. You know, it's a horrible thing. But here's the deal. We just had a mother who died when she was giving birth to a son. That son is healthy. He's alive. We could just pull the old switcheroo. Your wife will never know. You take this baby home and nobody will be the wiser. Well, except you, me, and God. But God will be happy because you're giving this child a home. And so the father's not sure of it at first. And he's like, you know what? All right, fine. We're going to take him home. But that was a huge mistake because as it turns out, it was the Antichrist. Now, again, if you haven't seen the first Omen like I did, or if you had no idea what happened in the Omen from 1976, I guess I just gave you a huge spoiler, but it's a movie that's been out for a long time. So he takes the baby home, they're living their lives, things seem to be going well. However, one day things start to change. These deaths start to happen. As it turns out, they are omens signifying that the Antichrist is here. And now the mother and father have to stop this child before it spreads its evil to the entire world. And that's the best synopsis I can give you for the Omen from 1976. But most of you watching this review have probably seen the movie. Again, I really enjoyed it. So I'm not talking trash when I give you that synopsis. That's just the best way that I can explain it. That's the best I got. Let's get into my positives and some of my negatives. First positive I have for this movie was the pacing was great. I loved how they built this movie. It wasn't a movie that was built on jump scares. It's not a movie that's tense the entire time. You know there's something up with this baby to start. Even if you had no idea what was going on with this Omen movie, just the priest making the weird, creepy deal to start this movie, you know something's up. Something's gonna go wrong. Like, you could have no idea this movie is called The Omen. You could have no idea this was in the horror genre, but that priest strikes up a weird, creepy deal with that guy at the beginning of the movie, and you're like, yeah, there's something creepy. This is a horror film. This is going to happen. Like, you could tell. And I just loved how they built this thing because things seem to be going well for the family, and then the maid does something to herself that I can't see on YouTube, but when she does that, she's like, this is for you, Damien, and she jumps off a roof. You get the idea. The point I'm trying to make is that the movie never felt like it was dragging at all. The movie had a great pace to it. It had great characters in it that did a good job explaining things to me without feeling like they were just exposition dumping on me. That is an issue I have with the first Omen, where I felt like they were giving me a little too much throughout the movie. But in this movie, maybe it was just a difference in time, because in 1976, they were like, you know what? We're not going to explain the whole movie to you. You're just going to have to go on this ride. And by the end, everything will be revealed. And I loved that about this movie. I loved the pace. I loved the execution of this film. I loved the way they were able to bring you along in the story, not exposition dump the whole time. But by the end, you had a clear idea of what they were trying to tell you, and that's done so well. Next positive I have for this movie is the way that they built the horror in this movie. It did not rely on jump scares, and I know jump scares are more of a modern horror trope, but they've happened in films that have come out in the past, and I thought they handled this movie so much better because the horror was built on these different omens or these different deaths that were happening. Instead of, oh, we just got you on this jump scare, it was, hey, see this horrifying death? Yeah, that was terrible, right? All right, now the movie continues. And they were just able to continue building not only the story, but they were able to keep building the horror in this movie as well. My next positive is going to be the addition of the next nurse or housemaid that comes into the house to take care of Damien, because when she shows up, this was my legit reaction.
Holy crap! You are creepy as shit.
And yeah, that was my reaction coming into this movie. She was creepy. That's what I felt. She came in the house. She's like, I've got my references here. Here you go. But she does it in a way that she convinces the parents to just let her start taking care of Damien. And then when she does take care of Damien, it leads to my next positive, which I'll just merge together. And that is I love that Damien was more of a controlled presence in this movie instead of being like this evil little child. Because that's where I thought this movie was going to go. It's kind of the reason I've never watched it before, was that I just didn't want to watch like The Good Son again. Like, I've seen that movie with Macaulay Culkin. He's this evil little kid who runs around killing people, and I just didn't want to watch that. That's what I thought these movies were, legitimately. And that might be what they turn into down the line. I have not watched the rest of the Omen movies yet. But in this movie, I love that he was this controlled presence. He did some of the killing in this movie. He did throw tantrums in this movie. But at no point did you ever feel like he was doing this to be malicious. He was just this controlled presence by this greater evil that was living in their house. And again, I thought that was executed so well. And finally, my last positive for this movie is going to be that as a parent, had some thought-provoking things brought into this movie, because as a parent of a child myself, if someone came to me and they were like, hey, as it turns out, you don't know this, but your child is the Antichrist, so we're gonna have to kill him. I would call them crazy as well. In fact, I'd probably do more to the person who came to tell me that than this guy did in the movie when a priest finally confronts him and is like, hey, Damien's actually the Antichrist. We gotta kill him. He's like, well, you get out of my office, you crazy lunatic. Get security and get them out of here. That's what he does to him. But as a parent, you have to put yourself in that situation and wonder what you would do. I mean, I don't know if I just would have had security escort him out and then wonder why he was being creepy standing around my house while I was driving away from it. I probably would have taken it to the next level. You come at my kids, you come at me, sort of a thing. But that's my point to this positive. As a parent, it makes you think about that situation. It makes you think about, what if that was your child? Could you do what this father tries to do to Damien in this film? I say tries because, again, this movie came out in 1976. Don't feel like I'm spoiling anything. He's unsuccessful in stopping him, but I liked that he was unsuccessful in stopping him because other people also didn't fully understand the situation at hand. Again, executed so well. If anything, my biggest positive for this movie is just the perfect execution of a horror movie. That's what I feel like. Like, I loved watching The Omen. But even though I loved watching it, there are a few negatives that I have, and we're going to get into them right now. The first one are those dogs. Listen, they're not scary. I understand that practical effects weren't where they needed to be. CGI wasn't anywhere near in 1976, but those dogs, they made me laugh. Like, anytime they showed up and people started getting scared of those dogs, I was like, well, they don't really work for me. And I get it. You know, they had the yellow eyes. They were being controlled by something evil, or they were evil incarnate, whatever they were, but they weren't scary at all. When I saw them on the screen, they made me laugh more than they actually did anything else. And that scene in the cemetery where they're chasing down the father and the photographer and they're coming after them, it didn't work for me. Neither one of those worked for me. I didn't really like that. I didn't really like how those dogs were portrayed in this movie. Didn't think they were intimidating at all personally. I say that, and if a pack of dogs like that came after me, I'd probably be scared in real life. But again, watching this film, they never really looked scary. I never felt the dread other people felt in this movie when they saw those dogs. And that'll lead me to my other negative in this movie, and that this movie is creepy. It is, and I really enjoyed it to the point where I'd say I even loved it. But it's not scary at all. At no point in this movie did it feel scary. But that could be, I do understand, that could be because I've just been desensitized by how much horror I have watched and how horror has progressed through the years. Horror has changed. They've got scarier images or flashes they can throw on the screen at you now versus something from 1976. There is a sense of dread, a sense of horror throughout this movie. It does build almost to perfection, but at no point while watching this movie did I feel scared at all. And maybe that's not the point of this movie, but it is a horror film. I did want to feel a little scared while watching it, but at no point did I feel scared. Creeped out? Sure, a little bit, but not scared. Thought it was a very well-told story, but not scary. And so anybody who saw this movie when it came out in 1976 and watches this review will probably be like, well, you weren't there. It was terrifying when we watched it. And that's fair. That's a fair thing to say. But in 2024, watching this for the first time, I would say to people, you're not going to be scared by it, but I think you'll enjoy it. Overall, that's how I feel about this movie. Not scary, but very enjoyable. Had a great time with it. Would highly recommend to people who haven't seen it. Might start putting in the rotation for the horror movies I watch in October going forward because I really did have a great time with it. And This movie, much like the first Omen, makes me want to watch the next Omen movie, but that'll lead me to a question I have for you guys. Is it worth watching Damien, the Omen 2, which just seems like a really lazy name for a movie. Let me know if it's worth watching in the comment section down below. But those are just my opinions because that's my review for The Omen from 1976. Guys, if you had a chance to watch this movie, if you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Maybe you're one of those people that did get to watch it originally. Maybe it did scare you originally. Maybe you saw it as a kid before you were sort of desensitized from other horror. Or maybe it had the same effect on you. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be scary. Maybe it was just supposed to have the sense of dread, the sense of horror. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And finally, guys, if you like this video and you want to watch more, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Okay, guys, we got to the end of my The Omen 1976 review. I feel like I have to say it that way because there's even a remake I haven't watched. But I did watch this one. I did enjoy watching it. I did enjoy making the review. But I'll throw the question out to you guys. Do you want to see more Omen movie reviews? Should I continue on with the Omen franchise and watch the second, third, fourth, and remake and do reviews for them? Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in watching. With all that said, if you want to watch any of the other horror movie reviews I've done on my channel, well, I've got all those right there. And I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.